Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about the noise. This video is about how can the WWE change itself to be a better company and have a better product. Now, I saw the Off the Rope Show video of the 12 steps of the WWE becoming better. And one of them is acceptance. Just like they said in that video, it's true. Wait a minute. There they are. The thing that the WWE does not see right now is simple. Since WCW is gone, since ECW is gone, since the NWA is gone, AWA, or whatever is left of it, maybe is a derivative, mostly is gone. All the major places that you could get great talent from, you can get great wrestling writers from, great wrestling managers, is pretty much gone. So practically everyone that used to go for the different territories in the Northeast, the East, the Northwest, the West, the Southwest, everywhere, have now consolidated under the WWE in one form or another. And whatever didn't go, either work even smaller promotions that they used to work, or they have, and this is in the U.S., or they have left the U.S. and started promotions in other countries. So that's what we're stuck with. The WWE is basically at the top of the food chain, and whatever is left is right below. TNA is second, ROH, which is an extremely distant third, and every other promotion. I think there's one called Evolution. There's another one called WMWA, I believe. I'm not sure about the different promotions out there. There are promotions, ladies and gentlemen. They're independent promotions, or indies as they call them, or as you were. But the thing is that these promotions are so small that they're not even a blip on the radar unless you see them in your town, if you're lucky in your state, or if you see them on the internet, because most promotions now are doing their work on the internet. Ergo, what happened with ROH, where they were doing the internet stuff before they had, I believe, Infinity took them on as one of their shows on their network. That's how they do it now. Essentially, that's the only thing they can do, because they're so small, they can't do the work like they used to do back in the 70s and 80s when the promotions, even though they were territorial, they were known. These are almost not known unless you're really, really into wrestling, like a really great smart mark. Like the Off the Rope Show, they know it. The British Fist, I'm sure they know it. I believe even Dream Boy 899 and a couple of others, Wrestling Jesus, they know it. Me, myself, personally, I don't know that much. Like I said, I am not a smart mark. I'm above average fan. But I do have an idea what could help the WWE straighten itself out from being on the drug of being the top dog for so long and get on the straight and narrow. And this is the truth. The WWE this is what it is. Think of it like this. You got a guy who, let's say in football, the best quarterback. I'm not going to talk about Peyton Manning and Eli Manning or whoever else is out there. I'm not a big football fan either, but I do love football. But honestly, let's say you have the greatest quarterback in history. Let's say they're the best. They take out all the records of everyone else. They take out all the records of the current person. And no one's been able to say anything since then. Now they're still doing their quarterbacking. But then because they think they're the best, they get sloppy. They don't go to basic training. They don't take care of themselves in the off season and keep themselves in shape. They become really fat. They think they have nothing to worry about, and then when they have to start performing and start going through the different other teams, they start getting their asses whipped. Yeah, they'll do some decent work. They're not 100%. They could have dropped down to 60 or 50%. But the point is, they should have never dropped to 50 or 60% at all. They should have just kept on their game. They should have kept being as they used to work, as they used to exercise, as they used to have to be, unless they got injured. And the WWE has been injured. One, what happened with Owen Hart, that was a severe injury to them, especially what they did afterward. Chris Benoit is another one. I mean, they took a severe hit with Chris Benoit. It was that bad. Along with the steroids and what happened with the World Wildlife Federation. Those four things hit the WWE very hard. And as a result, the WWE has become very sloppy. Now, what can they do? What can turn them around from seeing they're at the top, and they were doing great, and then they started getting sloppy, and then they had to start getting injuries, which is what happened with Owen Hart, Chris Benoit, the steroid problem and allegations, and going to court, as well as what happened with the World Wildlife Federation, and then losing their name, going to WWE instead of staying the World Wrestling Federation. This is one of the things they can do. Actually, I have a couple ideas. But the first thing they need to do is, just like what the Off the Ropes show said, they need to see they have a severe problem. They need to see that simply their product is so bad right now because they're trying to cater to a much more, how can I say, what type of audience we have. Of course, it's children and families, but how would you categorize them? I would call them a safe bet, because no matter how much they're going to lose, they're still going to make just enough to keep themselves going. So the WWE has become basically a territorial type of promotion. Even though territorial promotions years ago would really try to grow as big as possible within their region, they would in many cases only have enough just to keep themselves going to go to the next, like Starrcade, which covered many different territories. They would have Starrcade, and then they would, after Starrcade, they would have maybe a couple other smaller types of events that would keep them going until Starrcade. This is what the WWE has done, but caring for children and for wives and mothers and women, things like that, instead of going after the demographic which brought them to the table, which was men. I'm not being chauvinistic, ladies and gentlemen, not being chauvinistic, ladies. This is what brought the crowds in mainly. There have been women who love wrestling. There are women wrestlers. There have been women wrestlers since the 40s. Think of Mae Young. She's one of the oldest known female wrestlers still alive. The Great Moolah was the second. I remember the Great Moolah. I always loved the Great Moolah. I didn't care if she was fat. She looked cute. I was a kid then. I didn't know no better. But this is how it used to be. But how the WWE is going to solve this problem? They need to move away from doing the safe bet of just taking care of children and families, which can be mothers and normal women and sisters, whatever. They need to move away from that and go back to the original demographic they had before. Of course, they can still be PG. They can. But they can change their product to be more interesting to men. Right now, they're not doing it. If you actually believe that Divas is working, they're not. The only thing they mostly have the Divas do is do photo shoots. And I understand that Triple H has been pushing to have the Divas completely eliminated from the product, because they used to be, when it was the Women's Wrestling Championship and the Women's Wrestling Tag Team Championship. They had that in the 90s. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I myself, by the time that those two belts, the Women's Championship and the Women's Tag Team Championship, I stopped watching wrestling by 1991 to 1992. Around just about December of 1990 was the last time I watched wrestling. By 1991, I had stopped because I was very busy going to school and didn't have a very good childhood, so I was very occupied with that. But I didn't really get a chance to see much of the women's belt and tag team belts. But I knew that there was a women's belt because I remember Fabulous Moolah. I remember somewhat of Mae Young. Not much, but Fabulous Moolah for me is one I remember. Right now, Triple H wants to get rid of those tag belts. Get rid of the Divas and the belt. Just get rid of it, because they're not making enough return on what the Divas are doing. They're not, because 90% of the time the Divas now are doing photo shoots. They're doing something outside the WWE that's not bringing enough revenue. Well, here's the thing they can do. Reinvent the Divas. Bring them back to square one. Instead of calling them Divas, just call them women wrestlers. I know that sounds like, oh, come on, no one's going to be interesting. Yes, they will. Let the women go back to the old original women's championship belt. Say you're retiring the Divas Championship. I know people would say just keep it, but right now you need a reboot. Something new. For the women's division, just call it that. Instead of the Divas division, call it the women's division. Next, which is very important for the women's division as well as for the men. It doesn't matter if the U.S. title, the IC title, the tag team titles, the world champion, and the WWE champion. With the women's Divas championship, or if they're going to keep it, or just the women's championship, this is the most important thing that I believe will help them. Get rid of all the writers they have. Yes. And if you don't understand what I mean, by 2003 to 2005, what the WWE did was instead of getting regular creative writers that know how to work with regular storylines for wrestling, Vince McMahon let Stephanie, his daughter, the one with the huge implanted boobs that any man that would love to just bite on, she decided, because I'm guessing maybe Stephanie and Linda, who I'm sure liked soap operas, and it seems that since the soap opera industry is beginning to scale down and close out, they said, you know what, we got a whole bunch of writers here that did something on a weekly basis, that did decent work, let's bring them in. That was the worst move they did. Soap opera writers are not writers for wrestling storylines. They're not. They have no idea how that works. Yes, they could put out something good from time to time, but on a constant basis, they don't know how to do that. Because if they did know how to do that, we would have storylines that would be better than maybe 2 weeks, and then it's over. A lot of times with soap opera writers, and my mother used to love them, I hated the hell out of them. Yes, they could plan ahead because they could understand how to make their storylines for their soap operas. Sometimes they do it a couple of weeks to a couple of months ahead, because then they would have a break because they will already have it taped. And the actors as well as the story writers could have a break, and then they can come back a couple of months later, and then they can continue doing it. Of course, they'll have to plan right before the last few episodes happen, and then they can shoot them. That's how some of them did. I mean, there were basically, how can you say it, soap operas that were actually live. Very rare, but most of them were already taped. This is the problem soap opera writers have. This is a constant thing where there's no breaks. Unlike television, normal television, where there's at least a 2-month gap or 3-month gap where the storylines and the stories keep going, and then they may stop it. Look at what happened with Dallas. You had to wait 2 months before Dallas started up again. This isn't the same. Wrestling does not work that way. It's constant. And this is where the story writers had screwed up. And this is where Stephanie, Vince, and if Linda was involved, maybe, I don't think Shane was involved in this, but this is what it came down to. They didn't realize when these story writers came in, they're used to a format where you have a couple of months off that you can plan for the next couple of months after that. They don't do that in wrestling. So that's where the problem is. Get rid of all the writers who are currently soap opera former writers. Bring in people from the independent scene. Bring in the independent wrestling writers that, yeah, they're from indies, but at least they know how to write decent storylines. Of course, some of them are going to have work that's shitty. Sorry for my language. And I'm going to make this very clear that right now, like I said, bring in story writers that are from the independent scene. Yes, they're going to probably see that they have shitty work. Like I said, sorry for my language. But when you bring them in, that's one problem they have, is that writers can only work with one, what they have in wrestling, for wrestlers, and two, what amount of money they can work with for what the costumes they're going to need for these people to do the job. What venue you're going to be doing. Is it going to be a tables match? Is it going to be a ladder match? Is it going to be something entirely different where you're going to need to have video packages? Writers are limited by how much money they have to work with, because whatever they write, the producer has to authorize that. If the producer doesn't have the money to authorize it, the writers are confined to what they're allowed to do. With the WWE, they got a big budget, so when the indie writers come in, it'll be a lot more easy for them to scale up because they'll have a lot more money, and the producers will give them a lot more open-ended leeway. This is the first thing you need to do next to, for the divas, don't call them divas anymore, call them women wrestlers. Get rid of the title, get rid of the name, and let them start from scratch. Say that a new management came in and he's scrapping the divas. Just get rid of it. And they're being renamed originally Women's Wrestling Division. For the story writers, the current ones that are in the WWE, fire them all. I don't want to see anyone lose their job. That sucks. If you have to shift them to something else other than writing, keep them in the business. Let them do something other than writing because it's not working. Bring in independent wrestling writers from the independent market. Let them come in. Let them have open-ended funds so they can write much more better storylines. That's the second thing. Here's the other, which I believe is the best thing to do. Because right now Vince is about 67 years old, or about to become 67. He has been the head of the company since he took it from his father, I think around 1982 or 1981, I believe. No, I think he took it from his father by 1979 or 1980. I can't be sure about the year he took the WWF from Vince Sr. So don't quote me on it. But since then, he's done a marvelous job. He took a Maine, and I'm talking about the state, a promotion in Maine, which is pretty small at the time, and he expanded it to a nationwide as well as a worldwide promotion. But here's the problem. Vince has reached a point right now that he has not seen how much the business seems to have changed. He wants to keep everything as he did when he took it over. He still thinks everything's open-ended. And that's what the problem is. He believes he can still expand into different types of media. Ergo, what happened with WWE Studios. Ergo, what's going on with, like, doing things in politics. Helping Linda become a senator. When it comes to doing anything with the WWE Network. These things have to be eliminated. It is too much an expansion, and he needs to pull back on them. If he can't pull back on all of them because of contract obligations, he can pull back on a few of them. One, pull back WWE Studios. Get rid of everyone or sell it off to someone else. You must sell off WWE Studios because you cannot maintain it. It is ridiculous to create a movie and then it goes directly into DVD instead of releasing it in the theaters. That is how you don't get anywhere. If he had released these movies in the theaters, it might have had more impact because he did mainly DVD and maybe did selected theaters in certain parts of the country or somewhere in the world. That is where he lost. If he's going to go all in and do movies, he has to go all in and pay for the theaters. And he didn't want to do that. That's one of the reasons why WWE Studios is tanking. He needs to sell it off or just close it down. That's the first thing. Second, if he doesn't have a contract problem with WWE Network, either scale it back, don't put on so many shows, or basically sell it off, or basically eliminate it. Get rid of it and go back to your roots. Stick with what you know for the time being because you're overextended, you don't have enough funds to maintain everything. That is another possibility that could help the company save some money, particularly what happened with the, right now this is November 4th. We have until November 6th before Linda's going to be known if she's going to get in or not. I said in one of my videos, especially what happened with AW, Abraham Washington, that the WWE is pushing too hard on giving Linda her push to become a senator. You don't mix this in a business like this. this really can mess up your company, which it has. A huge chunk of their promotion has gone into Linda's campaign run the first time around 2010. So in this case, he's lost a huge amount of money that he can't make back immediately. So end that. End politics in his business. If Linda wants to be in it, she's going to have to separate herself completely from the WWE and say, I'm not responsible for WWE. And then Vince, if he wants to maintain his business, must not have any connection with it, show nothing about Linda, talking about nothing about Linda, and acting nothing about Linda. That's another thing. And I believe this, in my humble opinion, is the last thing that must happen. As I said earlier, Vince seems to have forgotten or doesn't understand how much the world has changed. But one person has. And I'm not talking about Paul Levesque. I'm not talking about Triple H, Paul Levesque. I am talking about Shane McMahon. Yes. The only option, I believe, at this moment they have. Basically, let Vince go out of the business. I know that Triple H is being set up for that. Don't let him have the position. Don't let Vince stay in that position. Don't let Paul Levesque or Triple H have the position. Don't even let Stephanie have the position. The only one that seemed to understand the business before he left was Shane. For the simple fact, Shane was part of how creative worked. He was part of a lot of the meetings that dealt with his father. But he reached the point, because it's obvious that when he left to go to Taiwan and work in a company there, he couldn't take it anymore. I'm not saying that they treat him like crap there, but if he doesn't have any say in how things go, how the hell can you stay in a company? So he decided to break his contract or run up to his, I think his contract ended, and then he just left, which I didn't blame him. But you got to understand this, ladies and gentlemen. The person that seemed to understand the business, even if he's still not there, is going to be Shane. He's almost about the same age as his father when he took it from his grandfather. So give the business to Shane to run. Let him come back. Let him run it. Let him run it the way he wants. Do not let his father be a consultant or an advisor. Do not let his sister be a consultant or an advisor. The only person I could say that could become a consultant and advisor is God, as the Off the Rope Show says. He couldn't be that bad of an advisor. I know he has his point and he has his bias where he wants to have things his way, but as a consultant, he's been there since Shane left. He has been part of what's already going on. Let him be there to help Shane in any way if he needs him, and then he can just basically downsize him to some other position that he could be a part of. He could still be part of creative. Get rid of Stephanie and put Paul Levesque there as creative of the WWE and for the talent. That wouldn't be bad. But let Shane have the business so he can run it, because he seems to understand what's going on much more better than Vince did. And I'm sure a few people are saying that he's been away for quite a while. True, but it doesn't mean he still doesn't follow the business. Look, ladies and gentlemen, a man who grew up in wrestling business, who lived in wrestling business, who performed in wrestling business, even after he leaves the business, doesn't mean he doesn't keep track of it. So he's going to be still watching what's going on with the product, along with what's going on, along with what's going on with his father, his sister, and his brother-in-law's competitors. Anyone that's there, like TNA, like ROH, and anyone else that might be getting an edge, if he hasn't done some suggestions, he's watching. So he's the best option. Now, this is my thought of what could be the change for WWE for the better. So I hope you like this Zane's View. Subscribe and comment. I'm hoping to get I'm hoping to get my SmackDown review done today. I'm a little busy right now. I'm actually going to see if I can record the New York City Marathon, because where I live, it's only 3 blocks away from the route. So I can actually go over there and actually videotape it on my camera that I'm doing this with right now. So I'm going to see if I can do that, and maybe I might put that up right after I do my SmackDown review. So stay tuned to see if I can catch maybe about a minute or two of it, because if they do the funny people in there where they're wearing the funny clothes, those are the ones I'm going to record. So all of you take care. Have a good day.